Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this week I had a very big haul with 16 comics. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, so let's get started. Number 16 for me is Wolverine, issue 6. So as you guys know, I've been reading all of the X Swords parts, so I think I've decided to go full throttle on that and really dig into all the parts. And the books I normally don't read, I am reading digitally. So Wolverine is a book I normally don't read. Now, interestingly enough, and I guess I could kind of reveal my number 15 as well, which was X-Force, issue 13. And the reason I bring up both at the same time is that they're very connected, these parts, because they're written by the same writers. So I believe so, at least. No, I think Ben Percy does Wolverine. Either way, Wolverine's in both titles anyways, so they are very connected. Art style is very similar, and we get to see Wolverine go to hell and learn the origins of the sword in the Wolverine part, and then in the X-Force part, it's his journey through hell and how he obtains the sword for, the final circle that we've been seeing with X of Swords. And that's pretty much the whole story. I feel like a lot of these parts, and as we've been seeing, is just, how do we obtain the sword? What does this one sword do? And for me, I'm not as excited for that, and that's why both these titles are a bit lower. I will say one of the other X-Men titles are a little higher, but that's mostly because I'm also reading that title. So I'm reading that title because I like those characters a lot. Not that I don't like Wolverine, but I haven't really enjoyed his present storyline right now, so there's a reason I'm not reading X-Force. There's a reason I'm not reading Wolverine. I tried out all the issue ones for this book. But yeah, overall, I just thought this was, once again, very exposition heavy, and a lot of the same stories. It's like, okay, how do I get this sword? Again, Marauders, as I'm sure you guys know, I do read. That one was a very similar styled storyline, but I like that character and their journey maybe a little bit more, and I like the art style a little bit more. So those are my numbers 16 and 15. I know that's weird, but it was Wolverine, then X-Force. The reason Wolverine was the lower one is because that was definitely even more exposition to describe what that sword's about and more of Wolverine's background and connection to it. And then the other one, at least we got a bit more action to how he obtains the sword. Now, I know that was a long-winded explanation, so let's get into number 14, I believe we're up to. So number 14 for me is Champions, issue 1. So this is part of the Outlawed event. Obviously, things were very, very delayed with COVID, and we're finally getting this Outlawed event, which honestly I wasn't too excited for, but I am a big fan of the teen heroes, so I'm going to see this one through. I'm also reading Miss Marvel, which has a big part in all this, and I am very, very excited for Power Packs. So, and also I like Champions. I read Champions when it was out, so I was like, oh, cool, this is being relaunched. Let's see what it's about. And I hate when books are relaunched in a middle of an event, because you don't actually know what the book's going to be about and what the vibe is, and that's totally what happens here. Miles Morales is narrating it. We learn a little bit more about the Outlawed event, not really about what Champions is going to be after Outlawed. But I guess because it's so connected, Champions and Outlawed, it has to be the first issue, first story. And, a lot of repetitive information if you've been reading Miss Marvel already. Miss Marvel got hurt. She makes an announcement. This law is now out that teen heroes can't be teen heroes anymore, at least without supervision. And the kids are getting in trouble for it. We're getting to see different opinions. The thing I did like in this issue, though, was the ending with Viv Vision. What's going to happen with her, because she's kind of this piece of the puzzle that we don't know much about here. I also wasn't really a fan of the artwork. I'm not a huge fan of Simone's art style. It's always very dark for me, and I feel like, especially for a Champions book, a teen book, I kind of would like this to be a smidge bit brighter, even though I know the story is a bit darker. But yeah, Champions issue 1. I'll read issue 2, I'll see the arc through, and probably the second arc, but I wasn't really that drawn to this first issue. Especially if I've never read Champions in my life, then I really don't think I would want to pick up issue 2, but since I know these characters and I have read the book, I'm like, okay, I'll read issue 2, because I'm already dedicated to it. But I don't think I'd be dedicated to the event as a new reader by any means. So moving on to number 13 for me, this is a little lower than usual, and that is DCeased Dead Planet, issue 4. I love this cover. But yeah, this one's kind of lost a little win for me. Lost a little bit for it. I feel the plot has been really slow because the plot is, okay, we need to find a cure, and I feel like in the same regard, the cure was a little bit too quick, like, or maybe it was too easy to get it from Cyborg in the end of this issue, or get close to getting the cure at the end of the issue. And yeah, I didn't quite love those beats, and I feel like I do obviously enjoy some of the smaller character beats, and you know, we get to see some more Cassandra and Batman, so I like that. I like the Black Canary and what happened to Green Arrow. We get a little bit more information about that. But this issue and this volume in particular has been really scattered, and I think that's what's really gotten me out of it. It's like, okay, I really like Black Canary here, but I only get 2 seconds with her, and then I go to Mr. Miracle, which I'm not as interested in. So it feels very scattered. It's interesting because I haven't been reading the digital version of DCeased. There's like another volume, like Dead World or whatever, and I keep seeing images from that. I'm like, oh, I kind of wish I was reading that one because I feel like it's more in the vein of stuff I liked from like Injustice, more character driven, and this one's just kind of been slow for me. I hope that does get printed at some point, so DCeased fans that read physical books will get to enjoy it. But yeah, DCeased Dead Planet issue 4 gets 2.5 stars, and that is number 13, 12. That was number 13. Moving on to number 12, which is Adventureman issue 4. This is already ending its volume, so I guess maybe because it had like a double-sized issue that counted as like a 5th issue. So they're doing a trade. I'm guessing they'll be taking a little break after this, and I'm kind of on the fence if I'm going to keep going with this. I like the book for the most part. I enjoy the main character. I like her liveliness to her new powers, and I like the whole family dynamic, but I wish the book focused even more on that. Like, I'm not saying that it doesn't, but I hate when it goes back to the pulp stuff. And I know that's like the appeal of the book, but for me that's like the most boring part, and it's usually like half the issue where we get to see like exposition and just all this text about like, this is what happened in the past. Here's the, you know, very different vibe of the modern storytelling we're getting from our main character, which again, I get it, that's the point of the book, but I just can't invest into that. So I'm on the fence of how long I'll be having this story or this comic on my pull list. But we'll see. I'll definitely get the next issue, but we'll also see when that next issue comes out, because again, I think we'll have at least like a 3-month hiatus. I'm not certain on that, but I think we'll probably have a bit of a hiatus that we're getting the trade next month, so they usually take a little break with the Image books. So Adventureman issue 4 gets 3 stars, I believe I gave it, maybe 2.5. I think it was 3 though. Yeah, I gave that 3 stars. Moving on to number 11, which is Getting It Together issue 1. So this is a new Image book as well. I was actually looking forward to it. I feel like we don't get to see enough romance type storylines in comics or slice of life stories in mainstream comics. I think there's definitely been a carving of that in Kickstarter books and webtoons and webcomics in particular, but you know, you don't get a lot of just romance slice of life books, and that was something I was looking forward to, but I felt like I couldn't really get into the characters as much for this one because it was very much about just the romance drama, and I just didn't feel like I felt attached or hooked on to any of the characters. Say, oh, I need issue 2. I felt like it was a kind of actually satisfying end for the end of this issue. You're like, okay, we see how they deal with the breakup and some of the other smaller dramas happening. So yeah, there wasn't much of a hook for me. I also wasn't a particular fan of the lengthier art style, or lanky art style wasn't really for me either. So yeah, it didn't give me enough for issue 2, but glad I gave it a try. So, and also it was cool just to see more of a diverse cast with a romance kind of Friends style comic book. So that was number 11 for me. Moving on to number 10, and that is Miss Marvel issue 15. I was kind of talking about it before, and this one's a hard one. I haven't been loving this volume of Miss Marvel. Obviously, I'll never drop Miss Marvel. It's one of the characters, you know, I really love, and I've really read pretty much all her. I've definitely read all of her main series, so I don't want to drop it. But I haven't loved the voices of these characters, and I feel like the storytelling was a little uneven because of the event with Outlawed and everything that's happening with Kamala. And there's some characters, the 2 in particular, I feel like Zoe, her being like, oh no, you know, you got hurt, Kamala, I'm against superheroes now, feels really weird coming out of Zoe's mouth because Zoe was somewhat of a superhero when Miss Marvel left in the Wilson run for, a couple issues she was a hero. And then going back to, like, the first pages of her character, she was saved by Miss Marvel. And now that she knows that Kamala's her friend and that she's Miss Marvel, it doesn't quite add up to me. I think maybe it coming from Nakia would make a little bit more sense, or maybe one of the outer characters like Mike or her brother-in-law or kind of brother-in-law. I think those characters would make a little bit more sense than Zoe, who really has a connection of, being saved by a hero and knowing the importance of that. So that kind of felt weird. And then, this build up to Bruno and Kamala kissing, and then they're just like, yeah, that was a mistake, let's not do that. And it just felt really unsatisfying, and just the way they discussed it, I'm like, then why did you have the kiss? Just like you built up this romance, and then they're just both in agreement, like, yeah, let's just be friends. And not that I dislike that direction for their characters, I just thought it was worded weird and paced weirdly, and I don't really know where they're going with that. And then, yeah, the overall event I'm not in love with, so I do think there's moments that are done well. I liked when Kamala saves these random citizens, and the law gets in the way. I mean, that's kind of the interesting part of Outlawed, but the rest of it and the stuff I usually like about Miss Marvel, the supporting cast members and like the side stories is really what I felt like didn't find its groove in this issue with an event-driven storyline. Artwork is okay for this book. It's kind of passable. There's times where I feel like it could be a bit more detailed, but it fits for the vibe of this book overall. And yeah, giving Miss Marvel issue 15 3 stars, and that was number 10. Yeah, that was number 10. Moving on to number 9, which is actually a double-sized book, and that is Marauders issue 13. So I was discussing this before. Why is this higher than the other ones? I am fully invested in Marauders, so it was a little easier for me to get into this issue. And B, I feel like it wasn't just an X of Swords story. I think it really delved into stuff that could have easily been connected to Marauders with Storm. Storm is definitely a character, doesn't get the spotlight enough, not even just in this series. Yes, in this series, we really haven't gotten much Storm by herself, but just in general. Yeah, we don't get enough of Storm, so it's really cool just to get a full issue of her and her connection to Wakanda. They also explore the connections between Wakanda and the mutants, and Krakoa. So I thought that was really interesting, and like where Wakanda kind of lands on with the mutants and where the mutants land on with the people of Wakanda. And yeah, Storm has a lot of history with Black Panther. She needs the sword from there. So there was a lot of interesting stuff that happened there. I do think it was a little longer than it needed to be, but I like the artwork. I like seeing Storm, and I mean, obviously it ends in the same place we've been getting, but this one I was a little bit more invested in than the previous side stories. Curious if that's going to be the same with Cable next week, because I've been reading Cable all the way through. Curious to see where New Mutants is going as well, because I was kind of like on and off with that book, and I'm an Ileana fan, so I'm curious if that's going to focus on Ileana. That's the one character we don't really know how she got the sword. I mean, we kind of do because she's Ileana, so she's kind of known for having a sword. But I would like to dig a little deeper into that, so hopefully we get that next week. But yeah, X of Swords, Marauders issue 13 gets 3 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8. And that is Buffy the Vampire Slayer issue 18. Speaking of a book that I feel like hasn't really found its groove, hasn't really found its pacing here. Reason's a little higher than the other books. There are some entertaining storylines, like I enjoyed seeing Willow come back. They definitely delve into a lot of the characters. I would say a lot of the supporting cast members in one issue, which was cool. We get to see Robin and Buffy's relationship, grow deeper, which I liked. Like, I like seeing Robin and Buffy, but at the same time, I'm like, where did this come from? They just fought the last issue, so this is happening really quickly. So I didn't know how to feel about that, even though I liked the events that were happening. I was like, oh, does this really make sense with the previous issues we've been getting? And then same for the Willow thing. I liked seeing Willow. I really enjoyed some of the stories that came along with her, but I'm like, oh, her miniseries is still going on. Why is she back? And why did she really leave? And I don't know if I quite like that. And same thing for like Miss Calendar. I'm like, oh, it was cool to see her, but We need her in this issue. But yeah, I like some of the more internalized drama between like Rose and Kendra and Willow, and seeing Kendra kind of joining the group. So obviously there's stuff that really jived with this issue, but then there was stuff that just didn't really jive with this issue. And then the artwork has been really inconsistent with this book. Sometimes it's just amazing and looks exactly like the show, and then other times it's kind of like this issue where I feel like it could be totally more detailed than it actually is. So wish there was a bit more of a consistent artist for this book as well. But yeah, Buffy the Vampire Slayer issue 18 gets 3 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to number 7. This was really hard to review. So this is one of the big books that came out this week, and that is the Amazing SpiderMan issue 49/issue 850. I was really looking forward to this book. This was like the first book I read this week because, hey, I'm ready for Kindred to be revealed. I am ready for more Green Goblin. It's been a while, and what I have not been liking about the recent issues of Spider-Man, which I've been overall liking this volume, I've been liking Nick Spencer's run, but like the current issues is that they've been prolonging this Kindred thing. I'm like, this has been 50 issues almost, right? This has been about 50 issues, and we still don't really know anything about Kindred. And I don't even know if my issue is that I don't know his identity. I don't even think that's my issue. I think my issue is that he's not really doing anything either. Like, at least if he was doing menacing things and we didn't know his identity, it would feel a little bit better. But he's always doing this kind of lurking thing where he's over a tombstone being like, yes, twisting his mustache, I will get you, Peter. So yeah, Kindred's kind of bothering me. The thing I think we were all really excited about, it's just being way too prolonged. I really thought this was the perfect issue to reveal him, and they just don't go that direction. Now, there are stuff I liked about this issue. It's number 7, so obviously I still enjoyed this issue. I really like seeing the different art teams and major Spider-Man artists on this book. We got Mark Bagley, we had Humberto Ramos, we had Ryan Otley. So it was really cool seeing that, because usually I normally don't like different artists in one book. I'm like, okay, that's way too much. But I like that. For the main story, I really didn't quite care about the secondary stories. Another reason why this is also not a 5-star book. I didn't need any of the backstories. This could have been $2 cheaper. But yeah, going into the story, I liked Green Goblin. I liked Spider-Man. I thought their interaction was interesting. But also I don't think there's too much new developed until the end. And I don't even know if I liked the ending choice that Spider-Man made. He like pushes Norman. Not that I think Norman's dead. I mean, I think we all know he's not. But he's like, bye, Norman. I don't like you anymore. I can't really trust you, which we all know. But I like the kind of cat and mouse game of like, okay, they're teaming up, but there's no trust exercise where you fall backwards and you know Norman's gonna catch you. He's not gonna catch you. So that was kind of interesting to watch. I somewhat liked the other spider people being involved. I love Gwen. I think she's great. And her monologue was really good. And when Norman saw her, it was a little creepy, though, right? Because I'm like, oh, man, it's kind of going back to, like, the Sins Past storyline. I'm like, oh, just please, I don't want to remember that. And I didn't really, I mean, I don't know. They have a weird relationship, but it was very creepy to see Norman and this Gwen interact. But yeah, overall, I don't know. I was just expecting more with this issue. You know, we spent $9. I was expecting some wow moments, and it just kind of felt like any other issue for Spider-Man. I know next issue is issue 50. Maybe we'll get some more information there. But man, I just feel like this book is kind of stalling for me. So Amazing SpiderMan issue 49 gets 3 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Young Justice issue 19, which was pretty good. I enjoyed this issue. I like seeing a Cassie Sandsmark-centric issue. I like seeing her relationship with Zeus. Don't really know where that ending came from, where like Zeus disappears and is like, he's not actually the person going against me, it's Poseidon. And then they go up against Poseidon, which was such a weird ending. But the other stuff I enjoyed. I like that Cassie's kind of in the middle of like, who am I? Am I human? Am I demigod? And what role do I play? And it's kind of this more meta conversation and story of how all teens feel, and that's cool to see in a teen book. I liked her teaming up with her other teammates. I do think when you get everyone in the same room, the conversation gets a little bit too bouncy, too ping-pongy, but overall, I had a fun time seeing Cass get the spotlight, and I enjoyed her. Artwork was really good, and it was a good back and forth between Zeus and Cass. So Young Justice issue 19 gets 3.5 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, a book that I was really looking forward to this week and obviously enjoyed because it's in my top 5, and that is American Vampire 1976. I am a huge American Vampire fan, so very happy to see this book back. And overall, it was a pretty solid setup. We're literally very setup-y. We get to see exactly where our important main characters are, mostly focusing on Skinner because he is human again, or at least not mortal and not a vampire. So he is just trying to live life. He's trying to obviously get back his immortality in some regard, and Pearl finds out about this and says, hey, don't really agree with everything you're doing, but I need your help. There's something on the Freedom Train that we need to get. Maybe he'll end up helping you out as well. So team up with me. And that's kind of their story. And then we have Cal and Travis kind of doing other vampire stuff on the sidelines. So yeah, it was kind of cool to see where everyone is, and another decade in American Vampire. I will say it was a little slower because they tried to, make us see everybody. But overall, I thought it was very new reader friendly for people who have never read American Vampire, even if it made this issue a bit slower. But very excited to see where history will connect. And obviously, we got to see a lot of interesting history connecting with like serial killers and all this other stuff, and then celebrating 200 years of America was really interesting. And I like seeing Skinner. I like seeing his thought process of being human and not being a vampire anymore. I would love to see more Pearl because she's my favorite, but it was good that we got to see a little bit of her. So American Vampire 1976 gets 3.5 stars. Also want to mention, I felt like the artwork wasn't as gruesome as usual. Maybe we'll get to see it be more gruesome as it goes on, but especially like Pearl's transformation. But there's some little small moments I really enjoyed from the art where, you see that Skinner is ready to punch someone. He's like gets his hands out where you think he's gonna have his vampire powers back, but then he realizes he doesn't. I love the half-face Pearl where we get to see like one vampire eye and then the other one's not. Those are really great moments that I think were kept and even elevated for this volume from the previous volume. So I enjoyed that, even though I wanted some more gruesome looks for the American vampires. But yeah, we haven't had an intense moment yet, so that's okay. So I'm giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4. This is actually, I think, the first time this is in my top 5. So, Batman the Adventure continues issue 5, probably the best one since issue 1, which, I've been kind of on the sidelines with this one because I feel like it doesn't bring the feeling I had when I watched Batman the Anime series. I just felt like it was very surface level, the comic thus far, and not saying that it's too deep this issue, but I liked learning about Jason. I really enjoyed seeing his backstory and what his character is in this universe. So I thought that was really cool, especially because Tim's character in this book is already kind of like Jason and Tim in one character. So it was nice to see the little changes that they made in Jason's character. Obviously not obviously, but he didn't die from the Joker's hand, so they changed that a little bit. So I liked learning about Red Hood, even if it was like a very exposition-y way to learn about it. His story was interesting enough that I was okay with the exposition style that they were going for. Artwork was good too, because you get to see the little differences between Jason's costume and Tim's costume and Dick's costume, and some good action overall. And I really liked how they went back and forth with the past and the present. So overall, Batman the Adventures continues. Definitely the best issue of the run thus far, and I give that 3.5 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, the other big issue of the week. I enjoyed this one more. And that's Batman issue 100. And it's weird because I know some people are going to be like, how do you compare these two books? Two different heroes. But it's also interesting because there's a lot of similarities between Spider-Man's issue this week and then Batman's issue, because they're both about going up against the big arch nemesis and them making their big return. And I think Batman did it better here because there felt like there was more stakes, The other book, I felt like it, and again, this is coming from, actually, if I had to choose between the two characters, ultra Spider-Man fan. I'm more of a Spider-Man fan than I am Batman fan, even though I'm a very big Batman fan as well. But I think maybe that's kind of what goes into the disappointment. I was really, really expecting a lot from Spider-Man, and I think Batman just I shouldn't say continuously surprises me, but kind of does. And, I felt like issue 100 didn't have, like, explosive moments that is like, oh my god, did you see that big reveal? But I think it just subtly had some really great build-up. I think because of the build-up was so good to get this finale, it was satisfying and just had some really perfect pacing. But yeah, what I enjoyed about this one was, I guess the surprises of Batman choosing to save Harley, but I think in the back of his head he knew that the Joker would escape, and he obviously does. And the thing I disliked and I guess liked in this issue was that there were still surprises of what Joker did during that night and what's coming from the Joker and how Gotham has changed. Even though the sun's coming up, it's the end of the battle, it's not the end of the war, it's the end of the war story arc, but I'm sure there's going to be more Joker. I like seeing Punchline's weird psyche in this issue. I love seeing Harley and her really pushing Batman to be more of an anti-hero in some ways, and I think Harley in some crazy ways actually saying some really interesting, truthful stuff to Batman, where he goes to kind of chase Harley then to save the Joker, but again, in the back of his mind, was it that, I want the Joker dead, or is it just like, I know he's going to be okay, I'm going to go help Harley? And the other stuff I really liked, and again, comparing Spider-Man and Batman, you have the supporting cast members, you have the sidekicks, and then the other one was the other Spider heroes. And I feel like they utilized the bad heroes better than they did in Spider-Man, where in Spider-Man they were like kind of standing around a lot. They're like, what should Peter do? Here they're active, and they felt like part of the battle, and we got to see shining moments from them separately. They really all of them, but especially Barbara and Dick Grayson, where Barbara returns as Oracle, and I think there's this really interesting way that she becomes Oracle, but still can be Batgirl, kind of making both fans happy, and then Dick Grayson fully returning to be Nightwing. So there's small moments like that that really help the longer form of this issue, that then you get to the Batman stuff, and it's just paced really well this issue. Again, I don't know if it was a perfect issue, because I didn't really know how to feel about Batman's choice with the Joker, but overall, artwork was really consistent. Also, the same artist throughout, and a good issue. And it has to do with the building blocks throughout the previous issues to get to this moment, and it really succeeds because there's a steady foundation for the book to succeed. So, Batman issue 100 gets 4 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is Black Widow issue 2. I really enjoyed the first issue, and I normally don't like Black Widow. Honestly, I don't think I've ever gone past an issue 1 for Black Widow, because she's never been a character that, has been part of my fandom or whatever. Just never a character I could get into. And Kelly Thompson really hits it out of the ballpark to really have any type of fan enjoy this story. And mostly because she's not Black Widow right now, and there's this really interesting mystery being built, and which really leads into a nice espionage spy story in a different way. So we get to see Black Widow isn't Black Widow anymore. She's Natasha. She has a kid that's a year old, and then Clinton and what's his face? Bucky. They're like scratching their heads, because they're like, okay, she's been gone for like 3 months. How does she have like a 1-year-old kid? Is this her son? It looks like her son. And there's these, lurking mystery characters in the background. And when you thought Arcade was the main villain, you thought that this was all just a game. Arcade, this is just like, he's just a henchman in all this. And I'm like, oh, wow. Then who's the big players here? And I like that Natasha doesn't know what's going on, and she's like building a bomb, and then there's this really wonderful action sequence where she leaves her fiance and she remembers how to be a spy, and now she's starting to question is like, how do I know these moves? Why am I building a bomb? And there's just so many interesting tidbits here that leads to a really cool mystery and leads to us questioning who these villains are and what the hell's going on, but gives us just enough information where you're like, oh man, I can't wait for the next issue. So overall, artwork was spectacular for this book. I'm really enjoying this arc, and it's getting me into Black Widow, again, a franchise I've normally never really gotten into, and I think that's always great to see, and really shows for a great creative team. So Black Widow issue 2 gets 4.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, which is Firepower issue 4 by Robert Kirkman. He has a pretty big week this week with the recoloring of Walking Dead being released, and now Firepower, which has been such a good series for me. 100% only up to issue 4. My favorite Robert Kirkman book. And, well, maybe Invincible is my favorite. But, yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there to be, like, one of my favorites. And Firepower, I really like this issue and just kind of the realism that goes into this martial arts book. But it's really about, I forget the wife's name. They say it multiple times. But, anyways, the wife who's kind of jealous over her husband, still thinking about that girl from the temple, and that's really what the whole issue is about, and us questioning, does the main character love that girl more than his wife? And it's like, no, he doesn't, you know. This is a more real relationship. Before, that's like the first love paradise he was living, but they didn't go through trials and errors like getting a house and having kids, and that's a big meat of the story. And this is all going on while the villains are lurking in the shadows, ready to attack, and do attack by the end of this issue. And one element that makes this book so special, and I kind of mentioned it, I have mentioned in every review, is I love that the wife knows everything that's happening, even though that puts a strain on their relationship in times where, again, they're being chased by these villains, and then also knowing that he had this previous love and that he lost, but his dad knows, his wife knows. He's not really trying to keep secrets, and I'm sure the kids will find out very soon too, because they're doing their own thing, and those villains are gonna attack. So yeah, it's just, I love that the build-up of this book. I think the action and the drama are just so well balanced in this one. Artwork is so good for this book too, from emotions and action. But overall, been really, really liking this first arc and really enjoying Firepower. So that is my number 1 pick. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I gave this 4.5 stars. Let me know in the comments below what were your favorite comics and your least favorite comics and everything in between. Definitely follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Go check out my comics like Father Like Daughter and They Call Her Dancer. And every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time is Comic Book Weekly, where we discuss our favorite comics and comic book news. Thanks, guys.